High alert! High alert! Chicago calling Florida. Axis attack imminent. Repeating, Axis attack imminent. Hi guys, my friend Moscow and I decided to play Axis and Allies, but with a twist. We wanted to use tournament rules to make it fast, and also play remotely to make it more convenient. He lives in Chicago, I live in Florida. Did it work? Let's see how the game went. Let's jump right in. Tournament games usually use the 1942 setup, which is more concise and advanced. We also decided to limit the game to 5 turns to replicate the tournament experience, which is usually when most games end after 6 hours. Now, we are playing remotely, so this game took a few days to complete. By the way, you may notice two slightly different tables with boards and slightly different pieces because we are playing from our homes, and I'm here using footage from Moscow and myself, but we always made sure that we were in sync, cross checking the information to make sure we were on the same page. Japan, round one. They decided to purchase mostly naval units, as you can see on the top left. 2 transports, 1 submarine, 1 destroyer, and 1 infantry. So now, how did they develop their combats? They focused primarily in central China, as well as attacking the American fleet outside of Hawaii on Sea Zone 53. So how did they do? Japan was mostly successful, as you can see by the placement of their units. Next is the Soviet Union, round one. So they purchased 4 infantry and 1 fighter. Their combat moves were focused on Ukraine, and also note the inroads in Manchuria. Germany's third. They purchased 2 infantry, 4 artillery, a tank, and a sub, so lots of heavy stuff. Right away, the Germans took Leningrad as a victory city in Karelia. Germany also destroyed the British fleet on Sea Zone 2 by Iceland, and Germany also placed all of its units around Berlin's industrial complex. And that was it for the Germans. How did UK react? They didn't make any major attacks, but they did land infantry in Holland. The UK reinforced its surviving fleet with 2 additional destroyers, and they built an industrial complex in India. This indicates that UK will try to maintain its foothold in Asia, but will they succeed? I'll skip Italy this time, as they are building up their forces in the Mediterranean. But let's go to the Americans. US built 2 aircraft carriers and a fighter, and they focused their combat moves in North Africa with a very fast invasion of Morocco to dampen Mussolini's aspirations, and on the right, a revenge attack on the Japanese fleet outside Hawaii. And that's the result in the Pacific: victory for the Americans with some losses. A subtle but important snapshot of China in their round one. Did you notice that? There is a massive invasion of 7 Soviet infantry in China. What does this mean? And now is Japan again, round two. They purchased an aircraft carrier with 2 fighters. Scary. As combat moves, Japan destroyed the British Navy by Indochina, which had an aircraft carrier and a fighter. And they also invaded Manchuria. They took it back. They beat all 6 Allied infantries that were there. Manchuria is an important territory. It has an IPC value of 3. How did the Soviets react in round two? In their purchases, they surprisingly bought a bomber along with 4 infantry and a tank. This is not the typical vanilla defense that many Soviet players do. In terms of attacks, they took back an important swath of land that isolates Moscow from the Germans. They got East Poland, Belarusia, and they also got Archangel. Germany on round two was very aggressive. They purchased 2 panzer tanks, an infantry, an artillery, a submarine, and a bomber. In terms of attack moves, Germany first attacked the British Navy by the English Canal for the second time, and they tried to regain Holland back. On the second front in Eastern Europe, they attacked Russia again. And third, the Africa Corps was invading Egypt. So let's see how they did. Germany completely destroyed the British Navy by Season 7 and also took back Holland. In Africa, Germany was able to take over Egypt, which is not a victory city but controls the Suez Canal. They were also successful in invading the Soviet Union again. They took back Archangel and East Poland. Now, these back and forth will prove to be beneficial to the Allies in the long run. UK round two, they doubled down on the Navy. After so many losses, UK purchased a carrier and two fighters. Now, will they go to England or India? In terms of combat moves, the UK bombed Italy's industrial complex. They also found that Egypt was too important to just let go. They brought in forces from Transjordania and a couple of units from South Africa that came via transport. And the result is yes, UK took over Egypt from the Germans, and they also occupied French Indochina in the Pacific theater. Now, UK's reign in Egypt was short lived because Italy invaded it with a sizable army on round two. Italy has been amassing a strong navy in the Mediterranean. And at the end of its round two, Italy placed two fighters strategically, one in France, the other in Italy. And they stretched a tank and an infantry in the Eastern Front, all the way up there in East Poland. The US purchased two transports, a sub, a tank, an artillery, and a fighter, revealing its expansionary intentions. In the European theater, the US invaded Libya, which was left empty by the Italians. And in the Pacific, the US Marines invaded the Wake Islands by means of an amphibious attack. In the meanwhile, the Chinese kept marching towards the coast. It seems that the battle in Manchuria in favor of Japan actually depleted its forces, and that will have a long term impact in the game. Now, the US placed all of its reinforcements in California. Did FDR abandon Churchill and Stalin? I was playing as the Allies, and as we were heading into round three, my situation was getting worse and worse. Germany, Japan, Italy were making big advances, and I was getting worried. But before getting there, please subscribe to this channel. It will help us a lot. Thank you. On round three, Japan purchased a carrier, a fighter, and a submarine. I was a bit surprised because Japan had basically no land units left in Asia. I was expecting a Japanese attack on Wake Island. There is a Japanese navy in the Philippines that you cannot see on this image. So an attack on Wake Islands was feasible and it would have been strategically important. Instead, Japan sought to weaken the Chinese in central China, and they also expanded into the Soviet Union and they conquered Buryatia. And then that's the results after the reinforcements. Despite the strong navy in the Bay of Tokyo, Japan looked a bit tired on land by now. Notice that the two aircraft in Shanghai, they are easy targets there. Now the Soviets, they purchased a fighter, an artillery, and five infantry on round three. The artillery had an offensive purpose, as the Soviets still explored any opportunities to counterattack and slow down the Germans. And here's the catch. Attacking the Germans in Archangel was an obvious choice, and my friend Moscow, he told me that he was expecting that. However, instead, I went for East Poland. I wanted to destroy the strongest force, including those three tanks that you see there, two German and one Italian tanks. So I mobilized all the possible forces that I had available there, including my air force and four tanks, and I only had three infantry to give me some cover, but I decided to give it a shot. And the battle results there, I was lucky in East Poland. My four tanks survived, but now they were easy prey for a German counterattack. But I thought that was worth the effort because the Axis had lost their three tanks in that exchange, and also six infantry lost. Germany round three. They purchased two submarines, two infantry, two artillery, and a bomber. So the submarines indicated that they have not given up the oceans in the Atlantic. But now things will get interesting. I was thinking whether Germany would risk an attack on Moscow through Archangel. It could have brought all of its air force, and I think there was about 40% chance of victory. However, to my relief, Moscow was spared. Instead, Germany wanted to take back East Poland and kill my four tanks. Again, Germany chose to use their bombers to destroy my British Navy for the third time. And by that time, I was sacrificing my navy just to alleviate pressure off the Soviets. Finally, Germany decided to control the Suez Canal with an amphibious attack on Transjordan. This is the end of round three for Germany, including the new unit placements. As such, Germany destroyed the four Soviet tanks in East Poland. UK round three was very quick. They purchased a destroyer, a tank, and a fighter, and they placed it all in India. No attacks or moves this time. Italy decided to repair some serious damage to its factories on round three and purchased a tank. For combats, I was bracing myself for an invasion of Stalingrad. However, instead, Italy attacked the American army in Morocco to solidify its position of leadership in Africa. Now, the US goes to round three, and this is going to be critical. The US purchased two destroyers, a transport, and a bomber, and China would place three new infantries. China went first. It occupied Hong Kong, an important victory city in China. The other Chinese infantry invaded Manchuria in the north. And now for the US, I was tempted to move my fleet and the Marines into the Philippines and liberate Manila, and that would have been an obvious choice. Another choice would be to attack the Japanese Navy in the Tokyo Bay before it would get even stronger. However, I decided to invade Shanghai, the other Chinese victory city, and take out both Japanese bomber and fighter that were causing lots of damage in China. And that's the result. The Allies now had complete control of China, and the US placed all of the reinforcements in San Francisco. It was very clear by this time that the Allies had chosen the kill Japan first strategy. The question then is, how will Japan react to this onslaught? On round four, Japan purchased two infantry, an artillery, a destroyer, and a fighter. But was there time to reinvade China? Now, Japan was able to destroy the American Navy on the coast of China. Note that Japan still had an empty aircraft carrier and a battleship near India. The Soviet Union bought five infantry and a tank for its round four. And right away, they proceeded to attack Belarusia and Bulgaria. Attacking Bulgaria instead of East Poland was a bit unorthodox and unexpected. But if successful, it would have opened a huge hole in the Axis across the Balkans. And that's actually the end result for Russia here, still bracing for an invasion of Stalingrad through Sea Zone 16. Germany round four made some strong purchases there. Four infantry, one artillery, three tanks and a fighter, and they immediately struck back. They sought to regain control of the Balkans with an amphibious attack and air bombing in Bulgaria. Moreover, they kept exhausting the Soviets in Belarusia. And that's the end of Germany's round four. They were able to stabilize the Eastern Front. Italy was refreshed on round four. They were able to buy two infantry and two artillery to be placed in Rome. In the meantime, they kept steamrolling across Africa undeterred, and they finally attacked Ukraine through the Black Sea. The Soviets were stronger in Stalingrad, so Ukraine was a better option. UK played smartly again. They purchased a battleship, a transport, and a tank. Now, would they go to India or London? The Navy was placed on Sea Zone 2, north of Ireland, and the tank went to India. Now, note the elegant placement of the three British units for strategic defense. UK took Transjordan back as it was left empty by Germans in their invasion of Bulgaria. UK also moved a tank to bolster defenses in Stalingrad. And finally, a fighter moved into Hong Kong. Now, would this be enough to defend? The game is planned to end at the end of round 5 as agreed beforehand. Therefore, US purchases now are irrelevant because they come in at the end of the game. As Moscow and I considered a round 6, an extra round 6 for exercising, I bought 3 bombers and 2 artillery for change, just in case. The game would now hinge in the third Battle of Formosa Sea. The US pulled in all available air forces and 1 submarine to try to sink the Japanese fleet, particularly its 2 transports. The odds of a full US victory were lower than 40%. However, the goal here was just to sink as many Japanese ships as possible, even if the transports were to survive. And still, the battle turned out very positively to the US. And even if the US had lost everything, including the bombers, Japan had no way of taking back Shanghai or Hong Kong in round 5 and 6. And moreover, the US still had 2 transports and destroyers to invade the Philippines in round 5. The Axis considered victory, as the tally turned out to be 11 victory cities for the Allies and 7 for the Axis. Some takeaways from this match. First, I think to have a clear strategic focus was important, and the Allies decided to kill Japan first very clearly, although it was not explicit from the beginning of the game. Second thing was some unexpected attacks that the Allies did, what I call tactical jiu-jitsu. Also, UK's elegant defensive support to USSR and China was a very interesting element of this game. I also noticed some missed opportunities by the Axis. Now I mentioned the Moscow opportunity as well as the Wake Sea attack that the Axis could have done but didn't. And finally, the excessive random luck, which is something that kind of bothers me a bit. I played once with low luck dice, and I think that was a very smooth experience. What are your thoughts? Feel free to leave any comments below, and see you later.